page onto your page, or however you like to share it, your church's page. Yes, it's not up yet, so. We're getting ready to go live in 20 seconds. And when we say we're live here at New Salem, everybody just start clapping. Yeah, yeah. All right. So it doesn't matter. However you want to do it.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Can we still? Yeah, we still.
I've got 15 seconds.
I'm still gonna trust you. I'm still gonna.
We could not be stopped. Turn it up and listen to the all-new WAVN, The Trend, FM 104, AM 1240, South Haven, Memphis.
FM 104.1 AM 1240 WAVN, The Trend. It is indeed Friday. And that's right, you're listening to your boy Frank Ray III, aka Mr. Frankly Speaking. And it is indeed the Frankly Speaking radio show. Listen, we got a special show for you today. On this Good Friday, we got a live show, and we are coming to you live from the New Salem Church Frank Ray Conference 2023. That's right, baby. You hear all of those wonderful people in the background. We've been here since Wednesday morning at 7 a.m. It's been going down all day, every day.
Yeah.
Since we started. And listen, we're looking forward to you joining us next year. Make sure you're watching the New Salem page and Dr. Frank Ray Senior page for the dates for 2024.
Yes.
Listen, we got a special show today. We're talking about the state of the Black church. Are we still relevant in our communities? And I got, you hear their voice, I got my predecessor right here in this midday with me, Mr. Jason Clark, Mr. Transpiration himself. Say what's up to the people.
What's happening? What's happening, y'all?
Then we got our program director, the one and only Miss Linda Covington. We call her Miss Lynn. Say what's up to the people, Lynn.
What's up? Good afternoon, everyone.
And we're getting ready to get started. I got some amazing guests. We got some amazing guests for this panel today. We got some amazing preachers, amazing personalities in the audience. But on the panel today, I got my brother from another mother, all the way from Detroit, Michigan. Pastor Welton Smith is in the building. Say what's up to the people, Welton.
What's up, Frank?
How you doing, buddy?
I'm amazing, man. Thanks for having me.
It's good to have you.
I didn't know you had a radio voice. I like that. I mean, Lord, there's a whole other person up here. I'm glad.
Then next to him, we got my uncle from across the bridge, West Memphis, Arkansas. Pastor James Morgan is on the microphone. Say what's up to the people, Uncle James.
Hello. Thank you, nephew, for asking me.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And then we got the trouble starter. The trouble starter next to him. That is my brother, indeed. Dr. Ricky Floyd is in the house. Say what's up to the people, Rick.
Greetings from the Fraser community. I left my pistol packing members at home, so I'm gonna be a lot more calmer today.
Listen, they tried to start some trouble last year. We didn't know what was going to happen.
Right.
We are in Memphis. You never know. Next to me, I got my brother, the Mr. Trouble Starter on the grassroots, the one and only Dr. Earl Fisher is in the building.
Yeah.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. Glad to be here. And I brought my pistol with me.
And he mean that too, y'all. Then next to him, we got the new and president of the only Black college in the city.
Yes.
Mr. Lamar on himself right now. Pastor Chris Davis is in the house. Say what's up to the people.
In the house.
What's up, Trey? Thanks for the invitation to be a part.
Yes, sir. And then last but not least, all the way from Murfreesboro, Tennessee. First Baptist, right? First Baptist Church. Listen, he is one of my new favorite preachers because he gonna tell it like it is, no matter the setting where we at. And I absolutely love his presentation. All of those I have heard. He got some amazing books. I just bought 3 of them in Louisville, Kentucky. The one and only Dr. James McCurry. Say what's up to the people.
Man, good to be here, man. Thank you for having me.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Last but not least, listen, let's honor God for my grandfather, the visionary of this conference, Dr. Frank Ray Sr. All right, let's get to, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Transpiration and Miss Lynn, and we're going to get these questions started.
All right, now, before we get started, this is a live radio show, so no cussing today. But even if you cuss, I'm on you. I got you.
Oh, great.
But we definitely want to have an open dialogue about the state of the Black church. And if you have in the audience, if you have any questions at any moment, the mic to our right here is available. You can come up and ask your questions and everything. But one thing that we're happy about, we have a panel of preachers that's going to keep it real with us.
That's right.
You know, and that's what we want. We need the transparency as well as the realness. And that's what this is all about. All right, Lynn, what's happening?
All right. Well, all we have to say is we are the trendsetters of WAV and the trend, and we like to keep it real.
Yeah.
As far as you know, you have the morning trend with Jay and Lynn. Yes, we keep it as clear and vividly clear as we possibly can. And of course, our baby brother who's on our team now, Mr. Frankly Speaking. There you have it. It's clear as that, okay? All right. So when we ask the questions or make a comment or statement, hey, just be as real as you can be, okay?
Yeah.
And professional. Let's try to keep it professional, okay?
All right.
All right.
All right, but I'm ready.
Even with the sound effects, you guys. All right. Okay, then. Well, guys, I'll kick it off and we'll go from there.
Okay.
On scale 1 to 10, with 1 being poor and 10 being excellent, overall, how well do you think the Black church as a whole has effectively addressed issues in our community?
And anybody can go first.
Everybody jump in.
All right, did you all hear the question? On a scale from 1 to 10, 1 being poor and 10 being excellent,
Yes.
overall, how well do you think the Black church as a whole has effectively addressed issues of the community?
Effectively.
I think we have some 1s and I think we have some 10s.
Okay.
I think we have some people who, and here's the beautiful thing I think about the pandemic is the pandemic pushed us in a corner that it pushed us out of our comfort zones. The pandemic, the racial climate, the political climate that we had, that church as usual was no longer acceptable. You know, one of the things that our church, and I stole this from my wife, it was her personal vision about 5 years ago. And we've taken that on as our church mandate, and that is we are restoring the relevant, righteous reputation to the local congregation. And I want you to notice that we did not say our church.
Right.
And I think one of the things that can cause us to be more effective is when we as the church begin to recognize that there are some people that have gifts, talents, anointing, skill sets that we don't have. And when we begin to partner with those gifts, I think what we'll see that those 1s being reduced and more 10s coming, because we have to have common unity in our community. And we've got to stop viewing each other as competition, because many times the very person that the enemy wants you to compete with is the person that God has sent to complete your ministry. But when you're competing with somebody that completes you, you lose, your ministry lose, they lose, their ministry loses, and the whole city, but more importantly, the kingdom of God loses. So I think that we can take the 1s up to the 10s when we begin to get on one accord and agreement and begin to celebrate other gifts and anointings that other people have.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I think that we need to make sure we delineate the difference between addressing and resolving.
Yeah.
Because I think in addressing, we've been an 8. In resolving, we've been a 1. And so we've specialized in identifying what we want overturned.
That's good. Anybody else?
Well, I'll jump in just to kind of piggyback what Dr. McCarroll said. I'd like to add a
another R, and that, of course, is responsibility. And the reason I say that is more often than not, the reason we get a bad rap is because there's an expectation in our community that the church will address and resolve issues that are not legitimately ours.
Okay.
And when I say not legitimately ours, what I mean by that is what you cannot do is give the resources necessary to address it to another entity and then hold us accountable for outcomes.
That's a great point.
Excellent. Anybody else?
Let me say this to piggyback on that. I think one thing that's happened is we've severed the surrogacy. So we stopped owning things we owned in the past. So it makes us look less effective. But to Dr. Chris's point, I think part of that is us saying, wait a minute, that's not our stuff. Right. And let's, instead of us overriding agencies, hold the schools responsible, hold the community leaders responsible. And so I think that's part of it.
And I think that's a good way to kind of put it in the context what some of the expectations should be. I think the question is complicated because you're talking about the church as a whole. I don't even know how to quantify that. I think Pastor Floyd is right in saying maybe we should focus on what's happening at the local level. And I think, my colleagues to my right are right as well insofar as responsibilities and expectations. And I think historically, the myth has been that at any point in time, the vast majority of Black churches were engaged in any type of social uplift movement at all, when at its height, the civil rights movement only had about 13% of Black churches that were participating. I know folks lie now and make it seem like they were a part of it when they really weren't. But the fact is, there are far more, to use Pastor Floyd's rubric, there are far more, I won't even say ones, because I don't want to disregard the weight that churches carry in order to try to organize Black folks at any level, just to get folks to show up, just to get folks to stay sane, just to get folks to commit to anything. I wouldn't give any Black church that has done that a 1, not in this culture and climate of white supremacist capitalism and violence. I mean, any church that's doing anything worth anything should at least get a 3 or 4. But if you're talking about addressing these issues in a righteous, and I would even say revolutionary way, because something has to change in light of we have been addressing it, because too many Black churches are tools of white supremacy. It's a whole lot of Black churches, and the only thing Black about us are the Black bodies that are in our congregations. But ideologically, theologically, economically, socially, politically, we are operating the same way white evangelical churches operate. And so until we address that issue, I think we won't be able to adequately assess where we stand on that particular scale, because we might be articulating or responding to that issue, but not in the most righteous and relevant or revolutionary way.
So Dr. Fisher, I want to go deeper into that, because I heard you say that a lot of us are operating like our former oppressors. I want you
Former oppressors?
Current.
and
Former
current.
and current.
But I would like for you to dive into ways that we operate like that, because I hear you say it, but can you give us some methods or some things that we are guilty of that you believe is operating on that level?
One of the most fundamental distinctions between like white evangelical theology or white social and political frameworks is the radical individualism. If you are grounded in Black consciousness, if you are grounded in any form of Afrocentricity, you know it's not about individualism, it's about communalism. But too often, we are focused on the I, me, my mentality, my breakthrough, my salvation, my uplift, my increase, and not our, right? And so what happens is oppressors identify your immature and insufficient and insecure desire to be individually included. And now you satisfied because you got a seat at the table and you can't even read the menu and you don't know the smell of barbecue Negro. So they cooking Negroes in the back, but you bragging about being at the table. And that's why the resources, as Dr. Davis was talking about, don't ultimately come to where they need to go, because we should not gauge our impact and effectiveness by what we are getting individually, but what we are getting communally. So white theology is much more concerned about individualism, and African or Black theology is much more concerned about communalism.
Yeah.
And I agree wholeheartedly with Dr. Fisher. No discrepancy there. The only thing I would caution us on is while we're certainly guilty of that in terms of our church, we have to sort of own the fact that we live within an interesting dichotomy in terms of when I'm a part of a larger cultural context where in all aspects of life, radical individualism is pushed. I mean, that is the ethos of this particular country. And we have to be aware of that because when I live, I work, I operate in, in all spheres where radical individualism is celebrated, it's hard for me to disconnect from that when I return to my local church or my local community. And I think we're right. We have to at least be aware of it, but I don't want us to oversimplify it and not recognize the real challenge that it is.
And I affirm, Doc, that it is a complex and comprehensive thing. I just don't want us to lie about being countercultural then. That's it. So if we acknowledge that, it is true that everywhere we go, these are the ideologies and philosophies and practices that are pushed upon us. These are the standards that are set, and this is how we have been conditioned to gauge our effectiveness and impact. Okay, cool. If that's the rubric, then we can't also say we are countercultural. Because if we are adapting to the culture and adopting the culture, we aren't countercultural. So I agree, and I definitely don't want to oversimplify it. That's why I was trying to even expand the context of the question itself because it's complicated. But I think sometimes we want the identification and association with revolutionary, countercultural, progressive, cutting edge, without the responsibility.
McCurry, you had something? All right.
Hey, anybody else want to add to that?
I feel like we got a counter from the left, but they trying to be peaceful. But we didn't bring you to this morning to be peaceful. We need to talk about it because there's a disconnect. I didn't call no names. I didn't call no names. I just said to my left. I just said to my left.
Can y'all hear me? See, this is what it is. This is the Martin Luther King side. This is the Malcolm X side over here. That's how it is. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
I'll say this, and I want to say these gentlemen know how much I respect them, and I want to say what Earl Fisher, because we used to have a lot of battles on the phone, and Earl said to me one time that I was challenging. I can't remember he was challenging me or I was challenging him, but the challenge was coming. He said to me, he said, Floyd, every team needs an offense and a defense. Both of those are necessary for the victory. You got to know your skill set. You got to know your gift. You got to know your anointing. And so I take on the approach, because I used to be Nation of Islam. I talked to the imam of Mosque 55, Brother Muhammad, who told me this week that he's going to shut the mosque down and bring his whole mosque to my church.
Oh, wow.
One time the Muslims came to Frazier and 80 Muslims came and passed out flyers that invited people to come to the Pursuit of God church. So to the white people, I'm considered a militant, disruptive Negro. To many of my black counterparts, I'm considered an Uncle Tom, and I'm happy because that means that I am right where I'm supposed to be. When I got shot, somebody was messing with me. When I got shot, the first two people that called me was the Nation of Islam, not my good church Christian brothers, because they were saying I was selling dope, pimping hoes, and slamming Cadillac doors, not my good Christian brothers. And a 85-year-old redneck from Slayton, Mississippi, that his son told me he was the most evil, racist man he ever met, that said, I'm coming up there to shoot out of somebody for messing with Reverend Floyd. So I take on the approach, be wise as a serpent, gentle as a dove. One of my great mentors, Reverend Ike, I'm not ashamed to say the best thing that you can do for poor people is to not be one of them. Now, let me say this. The best thing that you can be to enslaved people is not be a slave. The way that Harriet Tubman, Sojourner Truth, Frederick Douglass were able to set other slaves free is because they got their freedom first. You can't be a slave and free another slave. You got to set others free. So I have used them. See, I'm probably the least educated brother on this crowd. Probably, I know one of them, I ain't gonna tell their story, but come from probably the second most dysfunctional family. I ain't gonna tell it on you, brother. I keep secrets well on this panel. But watch this. In my Uncle Tomonism, I took 11th grade English 3 times, so I make up words. In my Uncle Tomonism, that sounds even better, didn't it? In the neighborhood that I pastor, because it's perceived that it's about me, in the neighborhood that I pastor, there are 200 people who have affordable housing in my neighborhood. The dude that was homeless 3 times, I now oversee 150,000 square feet of property, watch this, in my neighborhood. The dude that couldn't keep a job for 6 months, I now have a staff of 30 people and people that rent from me, good white folks that rent from me, hire another 100 people in the community that I pastor. So the perception to some may be that I'm selfish, but tell them 200 people who got the lowest rent in non-drug infested communities, tell them that Ricky Floyd only cares about Ricky Floyd.
Hey, where was I on that list of people who reached out to you when you got shot? Though? I think I had to be in the top 5. And here's what he said to me. I was like, hey, man, just checking in on you, heard about the incident. He gonna say, you ain't have to send your goons. To which I said, no, my goons wouldn't hit you in the leg. Right. so I want some credit. I got to be top 5 or something. Okay, all right. Oh, I also, to your point, I think, and to the point that I think Trey tried to make, rather erroneously in my estimation, the idea that Dr. King and Malcolm X dichotomy is a book recently came out by a brother named Peniel Joseph, and it's called The Sword and the Shield. And I encourage people to read it because it breaks down some of that myth about how, these two individuals were seemingly so polar opposite or maybe even at odds, when in actuality they were working together in ways a lot of people just don't know, understand, or appreciate. And I don't think any of us who care about the plight and the pain of our people are served well if we're focusing all our attacks inward on each other. Yes. While the people who are responsible for manufacturing and maintaining the conditions that have our people in so much plight and pain maintain their positions of power and privilege while we sit up here fighting amongst each other. So, let's break down some of those myths.
But I think along those lines, I think part of the places where we miss it is we as a people have bought into this idea that the Black church is monolithic. That, regardless of what the shingle says outside, we're essentially one and the same.
Mono one.
Yeah.
Like
monolithic, all like this, all the same.
Okay. Right. We're not all the same.
Right.
We're not all the same. Since we're not all the same, we don't always see it the same way. Of course, I'll give you a prime example. I consider Dr. Fisher a dear friend, colleague for 20 years, but he knows if he rallied the troops right now to go downtown and lift up signs for the Earl, don't call Dave. Because I'm not coming. We're not going to fall out about it. There's going to be no deep conversation. But he does know if they lock him up.
Denise going to call him to get me back.
Come get him out. And I say this, and the reason I say that is because I said it jokingly. When he said, Martin on that side, Malcolm on this side, I jokingly said, no, I'm Baynard Rustin. Now, the indictment is, many of us don't even know who that is.
Right.
Without even recognizing, you wouldn't even have a march on Washington if it wasn't for Rustin.
Right.
But the reason we don't know him is because he wasn't out front.
And because he was saying gender loving. That's why I told you, I don't know if you want that identification unless you try to tell us something that we ain't know. And I love you the same, Doc. I love you the same. You still my friend, and I'm still calling you to bail me out. But me and Rhonda gonna have to have a conversation.
Wow. Let me hit my friend.
What a shot fired.
Hey, I'm gonna tell you, it wasn't a cuss word, but I think we should have it.
I don't want anybody emailing him because he is not homophobic. You know what I'm saying? He was just making a joke.
Right.
Don't email him. Don't text him. Don't counsel him. He good. Don't cancel him.
Right.
Yeah, all right.
First of all, let's give our panelists a hand, you all. Like we said, this is going to be good, healthy dialogue that we need to have. And with all that was said, the next question that we have, what do you think it would take for the Black church to move from words to action? Just like he was saying that we've addressed it, but we kind of lack in resolve. So what would it take for us to move from words to action?
Action.
Right.
What does it look like?
It's choosing to move.
That's the post, as they say.
Just choosing to move. Like we see the issues. We've assessed the issues. There are more than enough statistics and reports and strategies. But a strategy in park helps no one.
Yeah.
And so the challenge is, as the Black church, we have to understand what we bring when we move, but also what we lose when we stay still. And what we're seeing now in our community is the fallout of a church who's been in park too long.
Selah.
One of the issues with moving is what we talked about at first, is that everybody does not see certain issues as our issues, is their issues. For instance, there are some that when someone gets killed by a policeman, it was just their fault. It was a bad day. When we see it happening all over the country to us in outlandish numbers compared to others. So how do we come to a common ground as the church, as leaders? Because what's you have the what means
Up to vote 901?
Yes, you have a common agenda.
Yeah.
That
the
you
Memphis
say
People's Agenda.
should be the agenda for all of us.
But I want to clarify, it's not like my agenda. Like, it's not something that I was sitting in the closet praying about like it's a sermon and then came up with, you know, these, like we surveyed over 2,000 people, you know what I'm saying, and asked them about the issues that were important to them. And then we put the responses into a code and said, this is the Memphis People's Agenda. This is what the majority of the citizens want to see. Now, of course, I'm saying majority, and that's important too, because we keep talking about the fact that we are not monolithic. That is absolutely true. So if we believe in, and I'm not saying all of us do, and if we don't, we should again stop lying about it. But if we say we believe in democracy and representation, then that means you need to care about what the majority of the people are asking for, even if it's counter to you. Right? There are things on the Memphis People's Agenda, and the Memphis People's Agenda is what guides our political organizing work. That started because the lowest turnout precincts in Memphis and Shelby County in major elections were mega Black churches. And so I'm like, hey, we need to do something to get Black churches more educated, more engaged, and more involved. So the People's Agenda is actually the ignition for these political organizing efforts, trying to get our people educated and involved. And so I don't want anybody to think that that's like my agenda.
Absolutely.
So the point is making sure that it's representative of the will of the majority of the people and what they want to see, even if it's something that we disagree with. But to my brother's point over here is, I think people are moving. They're just moving in a stagnant way because that is what we preach them into. Now, you know, and you and I talked about this yesterday, Trey. Like we have to reevaluate. You know, we got a homiletician here and preachers, and we have to reevaluate what we are motivating and encouraging our people to do as the end goal of our gatherings. And I'm not just talking about conferences or conventions. I'm talking about every Sunday. So if we want our communities, if we want our churches to move towards something, I think we need to assess what is it that we are challenging them to do other than say yeah. And I'm saying, tell them say yeah. Right. What are we doing other than having them come up, give the preacher their hand and give God their heart? And I'm saying have them do that. But if that is the totality of what we are moving them to, that explains the stagnation and not the liberation or the transformation. So at some point, beyond our, I don't mean this in a pejorative sense because I engage in these and I value them, but our theological pep rallies, beyond that, outside of that, what is it that we are educating our people into, in empowering our people to do, and engaging them in the work that matters the most after we leave the sanctuary? So I think that's what we ultimately have to spend a lot of time doing deep dives on, and some assessments and some accountabilities, or else we'll just keep coming to Sunday worship services, keep coming to conferences and conventions, and they become much more of like a social club or a fellowship outing than they do some opportunity for transformation and liberation.
All right, on that note, let's take a 10-second pause. We got to tell the people who he is.
1240 WMSO South Haven, 104.1 W281BR Memphis, the best inspirational music.
The Trend. And we are back. Go ahead.
What I want to concern of mine is, do the Black community as a whole, are they willing to accept what the church has to offer? We can give them clothing and social stuff, but the church is involved in spiritual things as well. And first and foremost, when a person gives their life to Christ, nobody's perfect, but their life is going to change. You can give a person $1,000 a week, and their heart and mind haven't changed, that person stays in trouble. It's not going to be a benefit to what going to be conducive to a good community. We got to teach them what the Word of God says. And I understand doing other things. That's important too. But if a person's life and mind don't change, then they're just going to keep continue to do the things that they're doing. So I wonder, as a community, want to accept what the church has to offer. I can have a barbecue and a lot of folks show up. But after the barbecue, Bible study, there's a short crowd. That's my concern with our people.
That's true.
Y'all forgive me. I've been sitting over here listening. Man, y'all hard on a preacher, boy. No, I'm serious, and I want this to be received. But as a pastor and preacher, I'm so sick of coming to conferences that say we're here to cultivate and encourage the preacher. But when we get in these type of rooms, all y'all gonna tell us is what we ain't doing. What we're not preaching, what our church ain't doing. And I think when you say, how do we move forward? I think we have to learn to appreciate the difference we all make. All of us are called to do something, but none of us are necessarily called to do the same thing. We sit here, we put a lot of pressure on a church that the community can't stand. Y'all, we're doing a lot of talking at what the church owes the community, what the church should do for the community, but we're comparing it, everybody shout, this world. We're comparing it to the world 30 years ago when the church used to be made up of the community. Now the church has to protect itself from the community. And the other thing we have to realize is that in appreciating our differences, we have to hold the whole community accountable. It's amazing how much we see Black Hebrew Israelites, civil rights activists showing up at church, challenging the pastor, because somebody told y'all pastors don't swing back. We love believing that because the church is the bride of Christ, we like picking on her because she a girl, and if the church swing back and tell you what we think of you, you're going to get on social media and say it's hate speech. Because this is what's crazy. Take that same energy to the crack house in your community. Take that same energy to the weed house in that community. Take this same community to all the strip clubs in your community, and then let's sit down and say, now, how can we collectively come together and make this a better place? I think we just get so hung up on, just because I'm not moving like you or as fast as you, don't tell me under all the pressure this pandemic has given me, because I'm not doing what you're doing like you doing it. Don't sit up here and tell me I ain't doing nothing. I think we all have to take the time and celebrate what we all have been sent to do, who we all have been sent to be, and how we all have been sent to get it done. So I just think we hard on the church. And the people don't listen. And here's the thing. Y'all gonna say all the church should do and then turn around and tell the people stop giving the church money.
Yeah. So
the church ought to be paying your rent. They ought to be putting your kids in school, but don't let the pastor say sin.
Right.
Yeah. So
you know, so that's what I hear.
Yeah.
That's good.
So I want to be your assistant pastor.
Yeah.
Right.
On this right here.
All right.
I heard somebody.
Let me say this. I think the only thing the community asks of us, in the words of Barry White, that we practice.
What we preach.
What we preach. And if we preach that we have power, and we preach that we are the light of the world,
Yes.
and we preach that Jesus makes the difference, it ought not just be theological rhetoric.
Yes, sir.
There should be some practical examples, not only in-house, but out of house. Jesus said, you shall be those who are my witnesses in Judea, Samaria, and the utmost parts of the world. So he never, as a matter of fact, when the church got stuck in Jerusalem, he sent a scattering.
Come on.
Through persecution, just to make sure they didn't get stuck making only house calls.
Yes, sir.
And I think part of what the world is saying to us now is, you say you love us. Just practice what you preach.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And I agree with you. But when you got a people that's coming to you, telling you what you supposed to do for me, and we know we've been taught by the Bible how we're supposed to respond and what we're supposed to do, then that creates even a bigger problem, because if you don't do what they want you to do, then they're gonna leave and talk about you. You didn't do what I wanted done.
Well, preacher, I done did what they wanted me to do, and they still talk about me. So let me say this. Yeah. Listen, church, I want us to recognize this. Crisis gives us the opportunity as the anointed ones to show the world who Christ is. And I want to say, co-sign with my brother here, and I was thinking about saying I was going to let it pass, but he pulled it on out of me. I heard somebody say, I was in Baton Rouge this weekend, that there's a difference between oneness and sameness. And I think one of the reasons that the church is not taking an action, because we teach this to our congregation, our Father, which art in heaven, give us this day our daily bread. But we don't do that with other churches in our community and our other cities. We become that, what's that word,
Monolithic.
Yeah, we become mono something. we only worried about our one.
I know. I said I was going to have to look that up
So
too.
listen, sameness, oneness and sameness. Oneness means let's find something we agree on. Let's find a cancer in our community, and let's use our resources, our knowledge, our connections, our insight to make sure that that cancer leaves our community. Now, there are some things we're not going to be the same. Somebody said, do you believe in women preachers so much I married one? That fine, don't go near her, y'all. That's my favor. But listen, if you don't believe in women preachers, that's yo. I ain't gonna let that stop us from eliminating the cancer in our community. I believe in speaking in tongues. You don't speak in no bye. That's fine. Don't speak in tongues. But don't let my speaking in tongues stop you from partnering and forming a covenant relationship with me on what we need, who we need, and how we need to transform our community.
If I could just say this.
We heard a message today.
If I could say this.
We heard a message today. Excuse me.
Go ahead.
Message today about you need a team.
Yes.
And I agree totally with that. And when you need a team, you have to drop egos. And you want to be the top dog. Get in your place what God has called you to do and be the best person in the place that God has placed you. And let's stop arguing over minute stuff. And let's get to the core of the situation.
If I could say this, especially given the fact that the whole purpose of these type of conversations is for us to share ideas, think critically around the thing.
Right.
I believe that a part of the problem that we're experiencing, we just witnessed in this place, and that is identity issues. My brother down at the end from Detroit, right?
Yes, sir.
The response, his initial statement was, listen to how hard you all are on the preacher. Now, I thought the question was the state of the black church, but look at how quick, you'll say, we made it, instead about the church, it became about us. How quickly we internalized it. They expect this of me. I'm supposed to do that. Maybe that's the reason the church is stagnated. It's because it is not a body. It is not a collective. It is an individual. You'll say it is a personality. And we tend to focus on that in terms of that personality has taken on the sole responsibility. Well, let me say publicly, at the St. Paul Church where I serve, Chris Davis not doing it. I am not taking on sole responsibility for the activity and the engagement of the St. Paul Church. I am one individual. We are made up of a collective. And shame on us, brothers, if we take that on, and sisters, if we allow that to create for us health challenges, high blood pressure and so forth, because you've decided, you know what I'm saying, to be a church of one.
Can I, because
Yes.
look, several things can be true at the same time. It is true that we hard on ourselves, and that is true.
That's true.
And it's true that we tout the scripture, to whom much is given, much is required.
Yeah.
And so it's like we want the blessings and the benefits, but not the burdens and the responsibilities.
That's
Both
it.
things are true. I am not. Look. I could cry as loud as the prophets.
Yeah.
God, ain't nobody else out here getting they tail whoop like me, right? Like, but and I think that there's space and room for that, you know. But the fact is, when we look at the plight of the people collectively, we have to ask these hard and critical questions and sit with them long enough to come up with substantive answers. And so I don't think anybody can be objective and say that people are not hypocritically condemning the church for doing things that they won't help support the church do. That's a black fact. Okay? They tell us what to do. We do it. They criticize us anyway. They won't help us do it. They don't want to show up. They don't want to give, but they want you to bury their people after they haven't shown. All of that is true. And if we claim to be the children of the light, it does not serve us well to spiritualize this to the degree by which we act like God was not talking about what it means to create and cultivate a community full of love, justice, truth, mercy, and equity. These are things we have to commit to beyond whatever we say and preach on Sunday outside of soul salvation. These things are all true at the same time. And I'll say this and be done. If these are the things that we are fundamentally committed to, then we cannot accept an oversimplified answer of everybody do their own thing because you get called that way. Because what do we do then when somebody says, God called me to do something that you know is fundamentally working against the well-being of the whole? Because one thing these faith communities are supposed to be able to do in relationship, righteous relationship, is hold each other accountable.
True.
But we can be so insecure, so internalized, so immature, spiritually immature, that as soon as somebody calls us into account, we are, didn't Paul say something like, why are you so easily offended? You know, because if we, look, he can tell you as a brother who, 20 years in, if he sees something that I am not adequately representing what we claim, he can call me and tell me. And I'm not gonna feel so insecure or so internalized in the attack that, man, I don't mess with Davis no more. Come on, can we grow up? That's a serious question that I wish we would not have to ask, but can we grow up? And I think if we commit ourselves to our people in the ways that we should, we will grow up where we can admit that it is rough on us. And these are the things many of us prayed for. And these are the things many of us love to lavish ourselves in when it's time for the love offering. And so if we're going to do that, y'all, we got to be holding ourselves accountable to both sides of the coin is all I'm trying to say.
Allow me to streamline my statement so that I can make it clear what I was speaking to. In that I was listening quickly to what preachers need to preach this so people can be, people are a sum total of everything they're exposed to, not just the Sunday morning sermon. The sermonic presentation cannot solve all of culture's problems. That's right. So when I say we're hard on the preacher, we really, really, really will tell preachers what else they got to cover, what else they got to talk about, what else they should be teaching. And I actually believe when we ask, how do we make progress and how you feel about this, I'm not sure that we are called to change the world as much as we are called to change our world. As Dr. McCarroll, I believe his name is, said, that we are called to practice what we preach. The Church of Acts chapter 2, I think we've not paid attention to the fact that the Church of Acts was really a community-driven church. What Acts did, they didn't focus on changing their world. They focused on creating a community that looks like the world we're called to create. So Acts chapter 2, the Church of Acts was not a mega church with 10,000 seats. The Church of Acts might have had a meeting place, but then the gas station, the grocery store, the school, you get what I'm saying? So the Church of Acts created a community, and the way that they impacted the world was that they modeled within their community. Yes. Yeah. And I think a lot of us are trying to change everybody, and you can't change the world. You got to make some changes in yours. Mm-hmm. And so when you say, well, what is the church doing? I don't feel like I can speak for the church, but as far as my community, my culture, I think if we do more focusing on the communities we're called to, making those resemble what we're called to do. Yes, sir. You see, whatever I don't see in that world, I'm going to make sure I cultivate that in the one I'm called to, so that the rest of the world will look at us and say, now we need to start doing what they're doing. And I think that's the difference that the kingdom makes. If we learn to create the world we keep talking about, I think that is what will inspire the rest of the world to resemble what we've done.
You just described my ministry, brother.
Powerful.
In a 1 mile radius of my church, yes, we house 200 people. We just closed on a strip mall that the young boys in our community, on the staff, that we have a regroup boutique that we had. All the young men were either last year they were homeless, juvenile court, Lakeside Hospital, what is the mental hospital, a labeled special education. All of them are working in suits and ties. In our community, in a 0.7 mile radius, we house, we clothe, we feed. We've got a Christian university. We're working on a private Christian school right now. So I agree with you, but our intent is to start there and then let the Lord enlarge our territories.
Absolutely. That's what the Church of Acts was all about. When God shifted the earth in Acts chapter 2, they're trying to figure out, man, how do we get this thing back together? How do we, now that the earth is shifted, we've shifted eras. Jesus is ascended. Now we're trying to figure out how we're going to get through Samaria, Judea, the uttermost parts of the earth. So now the Church of Acts literally starts modeling in their community the values that they've lost in that one. In Detroit right now, I'll give you all this. In Detroit right now, historically, the model of the church was big buildings. I may have it. I believe the future of the church, let's look at it. We're in a world where the school system is getting ready to teach your children that they are what they feel.
Yeah.
You don't have to be a boy if you don't want to be a boy. So how does the church make progress? It ain't got nothing to do with service. It's got everything to do with structure. So what do you mean? The progress to solve that problem is not me having another church service. It's me buying a school. Come on, son.
Come on.
See, it's not me buying, it's not bigger buildings.
Yeah.
Give me a school so since they won't teach you Black history, we
Come
can,
on now.
are y'all hearing what I'm telling you?
I hear you. I
So,
want to.
no. Give me the, next to our church,
Go ahead. No, finish the point.
next to our church, everybody shout a gas station.
Gas station.
I'm trying to buy this gas station next to my church.
Yes.
Why are you trying to buy this gas station next to your church? Because I'm trying to help the community. Well, how are we going to do this? On Sundays,
There you go.
I know that I can't expect a 30-minute sermon to solve every problem in the world. So what if there are people that won't come to church to hear my sermon?
Right.
But what if on Sunday, while we in this increase in gas, every Sunday I could do something crazy, like from 2 to 4.
Free gas.
Sell gas at cost. I didn't say free. I said at cost.
Yeah, I got you.
Because we got to stop thinking community is always free.
There you go. There you go.
Without money, you can't do nothing.
Right.
So watch this. The model of the church for me may not be a praise team screaming and dancing. No, hey, my ministers, y'all go to the gas station from 2 to 4, sell gas at cost. While they're waiting on their gas, they're going to turn my sermon on the speaker. Because faith come by
Hearing.
Okay, so they're going to turn my sermon on speaker. While they're listening to my sermon, you're going to pump their gas. But while you pumping their gas, somebody going to be praying at the driver's window. So I'm saying, as we look at the future, I think when you look at Acts, we're going to have to create community outside of church. But we don't have the influence to do it all over the world. We got to start with the world God has called us to serve.
Hang on, y'all. FM 104.1 AM 1240 WAVN The Trend. You are locked and loaded with a special live episode of the Frankly Speaking Radio Show. We are live from Frank Ray Conference 2023.
Oh, yeah.
Come on.
Oh, yeah.
I got Mr. Jason Clark, Mr. True Inspiration with me. I got Miss Elsie, Miss Linda Covington in the building, and the voice you just heard talking just a few minutes ago, my brother from another mother, Pastor Welton Smith from Detroit. Pastor Earl Fisher is getting ready to say something else, and then we're going to open up the floor and get out of here. Come on.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate that, especially coming from Benton Harbor. Anybody who says anything about Detroit.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Did y'all notice how his face changed when I said Benton Harbor? He never would have thought. Okay, but anybody from Michigan knows what time it is. But look, I really appreciate the innovative approach to how we can increase the reach and hopefully transform the culture in the community. So I want y'all to hear that word of affirmation, because I agree with that. And I also understand the point about the school, I think, is so pivotal, because unless we see the structural and systemic impact and issue, if I do start my own school and we are teaching Black consciousness, how many students will ultimately be impacted at my school versus how many going to be impacted by the curriculum that's being passed at the state level and being forced into our children's ears and heads across the state? So the church at Acts was accused of being guilty of turning the world upside down. So at some point, with all of our innovative approaches and all of our communal, and look, I'm with it. I'm saying that is not the destination, that's the signpost. You don't stop at the signpost and it says Michigan 500 miles and you take a picture and tell everybody you in Michigan. You say, I've made some progress. This is a step. I'm headed in the right direction, but I still got 500 miles to go. So ultimately, we have to be cognizant of how the systems and structures are implemented and instituted, such that we aren't bragging too much. We should brag some, okay? You should pat your back on we should pat ourselves on the back some. But if you are throwing starfish into the seashore you can say, I made a difference to that one, or I made a difference to that 100. But if global warming is making a tsunami, and there are thousands of starfish being washed on the seashore, can we also commit to doing something about the conditions? Can we also commit to doing something about the curriculum? Which means we also have to be engaged in a larger team or group project. So that's what I'm saying. I'm with all of the innovation, and it is necessary. I appreciate it. I'm down with it too. And I'm saying we can't stop there and say, oh, you build a school and you be like Oprah, you get one and I get one and everybody gets one. Because at the end of the day, the basic fact is, in the society that we live in, the majority of our kids are going to be educated in public school. So locally, and Detroit has the same demographic, we get to make arguments that other metropolitan areas can't make. 65% of the people in Memphis, Black folks. You can't explain to me why our curriculum shouldn't reflect that. But these ain't the arguments everybody can make. But my broader point is, when we start talking about the ultimate impact, it has to move beyond the charitable stuff, which is valuable, but it's still isolated and individualistic for the most part. It is helpful to the ones that encounter it, but we need to make a broader impact. And I'm not saying that individually we need to be all things to all people. I'm saying that we have to make sure that we are connected in ways that comprehensively we have a larger reach, so that more of our people, the masses, can ultimately get access to the things we need.
Absolutely. I think Pastor Ricky.
Pastor, I want to make I know we're getting ready to transition to questions for the group. I want to make a small, simple, low-hanging fruit suggestions that will help all of our ministries. Until we get people like Dr. Earl, who is the greatest at it, to help change the laws for education, until we're able to get our school, if we know, men, that if a child can't read by the age of the 3rd grade, that there is a 70% chance that they're going to jail or they're going to be on welfare. Until you get your school, until Dr. Earl gets the laws changed, why don't we have reading on Wednesday night Bible study or Sunday school reading, teaching our children?
That's good.
Now, let me tell you what we did. And it was my wife's idea. See, when you're done, marry somebody smart. Y'all won't admit it. Y'all did the same thing. My wife came up with Wednesday night, probably 65% of our congregation that shows up on Sunday shows up on Wednesday night. And we have more visitors on Wednesday nights than we do on Sunday mornings. And what we do is we give a free meal at 6 o'clock. Because what the parents say, I got to feed the children, I got to do homework. We have break-off sessions, classes, and one of the break-off sessions is we help your child with their homework on Wednesday night. This new math that they got, I don't know it.
Right.
So we put teachers and retired teachers who know this new math. I took 11th grade English 3 times, so I don't know old English. But what we do is we have people who are skilled, who are anointed, people who've been sitting on the bench. We give them an opportunity to have a sense of value in the church. So you've got children and parents and families coming out on Wednesday night, eating dinner together, going to different classes, credit classes, fitness classes, anger management classes, how to be saved in single classes, and while their children are learning how to read, so we can prevent them being in that number of 70% on welfare going to jail.
Want to go to Dr. James McCarroll, and then we'll go to the floor.
Jawazo Kunjufu in his book, Black Economics, argues the point that the reason most cultures who come into the U.S. succeed at a rate far beyond our own is because they come in with a strategy and they come in with a base culture. I think one of the challenges is everyone has to be the voice of the culture. When it comes to gatherings like this, and I'll be very transparent with you, many times it feels like a waste of time. It's almost like a rhetorical contest to see who can say the most, who can prove their resume, who can show what they're doing and get kudos and brownie points for what they're doing without anyone in here really leaving with the sound strategy that's going to really benefit all of us. And as much as I appreciate what all of us do, if all of us walk out of here and he's still doing what he's doing and you're doing what you're doing, we all still fail and have wasted actually the one thing you can't replace, and that is your time. So what I would recommend, if we're serious about results, is there a way that all of us on this stage can say, hey, here's one program I do. This is how I do it. And it's proven to be effective. And we will give that to you. Take a notepad out, write these resources down. So when you walk out with at least 6 strategies.
That's good.
That you can implement immediately to start to be of benefit. Because for us to sit up here and have a back and forth, it's good for our egos. Yeah. But to be very honest with you, it's a waste of time. And I hate to say it that way.
Take the one strategy I just gave you.
Yeah. So
teach your children how to read.
Yeah. So if we get 5 simple strategies or 6 simple strategies, I think it would help all of us. And that allows us to no longer be in isolation, but to say, hey, what we have, we can share. And we can at least see that benefit of the, in the churches.
I so deeply believe in the impact of political education theologically that I'm willing to talk to anybody, but it is necessary. Now, I'm sorry, it's not simple, but it is necessary. And I'm willing and have been public about, doing the deep dives, and I'll set it up. We can organize something. I've met with pastors and workshops and all this other stuff. I'm down for that. And that's the strategy that I'm offering, because I don't think we can accomplish God's will for our world without it.
The strategy I'll offer is just tithe into your community. Take 1/10 of everything that comes into your offering place and give it back out the door. You may earmark it different ways, but to stop and say, okay, if I bring $100,000 into the church, 10,000 of it will go outside of these doors. And I can share with you from evidence, from witnessing it, your church finances will grow. If you honor God in the tithe, God will bless that. And so that's one thing I'd recommend to you. And here's the blessing of it. As you do it and God blesses you, you can do more. And as you continue to do that, you automatically have earmarked your community inherently in the hearts of the people as valuable enough to give resources to.
So Dr. Floyd gave us strategy number 1. Dr. McCarroll gave us strategy number 2. Dr. Davis. I wasn't done counting. I said number 2. I said number 2. Number 3. Your number 3 was? Number 3 was?
Political education.
Thank you. Number 4?
One of the things that we do that is proven well, I think oftentimes in our efforts to help, we end up handicapping people. Like many of you, we run, of course, a weekly food pantry. And what we noticed was we had a number of individuals who we knew were food stamp recipients. But by the end of the month, with a week and a half, 2 weeks left in the month, they was coming to the food pantry. I assumed that they were selling the food stamp. So finally, I got up enough courage to say to one of the young ladies who was coming, we can't continue to support you with food and you're selling your food. She said to me, Pastor Davis, I'm not selling my food stamp. And so we went back and forth. She said, well, I'll tell you what I'll do. The next time I get them, you come to the grocery store with me. So I said, I'll do it. She reached out to me. She had it. I said, now you do whatever you normally do. She said, I am. And all of a sudden, I discovered what the issue was. No one had ever taught her how to shop, how to prepare meals. So since she couldn't cook, she got cold cuts, she got chips, she got cookies. So 2 or 3 weeks into it, it was gone. I was looking for a way to get my seniors to engage who were retired. I was able to then partner her with some of the seniors who took her to the grocery store, taught her how to shop, brought her back to the church to teach her how to cook staple items where she would learn how to shop for the entire month. And after 90 days of this process, she's not returned to the food pantry because she had enough. She simply didn't know how to, and it was not her fault. No one had ever bothered to teach her. So not only did we empower her, now all of a sudden it gave me a way to engage my seniors. It helped her. So it was, what we call sometimes particularly in Black spaces around education, it was a wraparound service that she needed.
Pastor Morgan, number 5, and then Pastor Welton, wrap it up with number 6 in bullet point form. I know you already gave, but number 5, Pastor Morgan.
I agree with what I've heard. Whatever we do, we're going to have to do it together. And we're going to have to leave minute things behind and get to the core of what's going on. And what I've heard from everybody on this panel on that is that we're just going to have to think outside the box without compromising what the commission that God has given us. And listening to what Dr. Davis just said, makes a lot of sense for God to give you insight on somebody's situation. And then God will give you the wisdom on how to handle that situation, which will birth other things to come together.
Amen.
That's what I see.
Pastor Welton, number 6, bulletproof form.
I guess mine would be cultivate more courageous conversation. We're in a moment we've never been in before. We're seeing things we've never dealt with before. We're in a world where sin has rights. Every person that was a master 3 years ago is a novice right now. We are all approaching a moment as amateurs. So we have to have the humility to let somebody else's iron sharpen up. None of us are right, which is why I've enjoyed this conversation, because it's you can have contention without being contentious. And I think that these type of conversations create the pathway to creating some type of solution, which is why in September, it's a conference we're gonna have about conversations in Detroit, that we gotta talk about this stuff, and we have to be honest and have the courage to disagree, as well as have the courage to be honest about what we're facing, what we're seeing, what we desire to do. And I think if we learn how to glean from one another in environments like this, it'll help us have clarity as far as where our starting point is for each and every one of us. So talk to somebody that's got something to say.
In my closing, civil rights did not get Martin Luther King killed. Civil rights. When he started talking about that money, that's when they killed him. We, church, as a responsibility, have a responsibility not just teach our people about Noah, but to teach them what a 700 or 800 credit score does to their life.
That's it. That's it.
What a bank in Memphis,
There you go.
300,000 people are unbankable. We have a responsibility to build relationships with bank, to have where they can come to our campus and learn how to increase their credit. They can learn how to budget, and that's all, folks.
And something else that I want to close now.
Close, brother. Close, brother.
Is Pastor Ray is more to me than a pastor. He's a father. He's a mentor, confidant. And I heard him say the other day that I think this ball player name was M.L. Carr, who played with Boston Celtics. I never saw M.L. Carr play, but I did see him on the bench doing that towel like that. He was cheering on the ones who was out front making things happen. And we got to drop this egotistical crap that's going on within our own people. We can't even get a superintendent elected with all our own folks. You see what I'm saying? Because we're trying to too fast. We're trying to raise. We want to be the one who everybody talks about. But the thing is, when Boston won the championship, ML Carr didn't play, but he got a ring.
All right.
And I don't win. We gotta win.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That's my close. Door church soap.
Dr. Ray is at the microphone.
You know, some years ago when we were getting ready to build this building next door, I was in a hurry to get it built. Engineer called me and said we had to hold up building. And I asked why. He said that this building next door is 180 feet wide. He said, but the fourth side of the building is 1/8 of an inch off. I said, you mean you're going to stop the building for 1/8 of an inch? He said, well, Reverend, he said, if we build this building with 1/8 of an inch off at the foundation, it's going to be 1.5 feet off once we get 60 feet high. He said, for the building to be what it should and be, you have to have the foundation right. What I'm afraid that we're doing is that we're constantly drifting from the foundation of the church. And when you do that, you start doing a lot of stuff that God didn't call you to do. But if we stick with the foundation, he says it in Acts 2:42, and they continued steadfast in the apostle doctrine, breaking of bread, and in prayer. If we stick with foundation.
And that's the reason why we're all at this conference right now. Right there. Let's give Dr. Ray a hand, you all.
I told Trey to get Pastor Ray up here.
Right. All right, we got to close out because I think the next class starts at 1:45. So you can take us, yeah.
Absolutely. FM 104.1 AM 1240. You have been listening to Ray's Roundtable right here live on the Frankly Speaking radio show. It is Friday, which means you will not hear from me again until Monday morning at 11 o'clock. So until then, thank you for listening right here on FM 104.1 AM 1240 WAVN The Trend. And until Monday, you already know what I do. I holler.
Hey.